certainly somebody who has gone through a lot of the similar disturbances and incongruences and difficulties you have going from a so-called one Sangha to another. Of course, as Gurudev said, we're all ISKCON. He's served Srila Gurudev, Srila Prabhupada for many years. He served Srila Gurudev for many years. And everything he teaches, everything he imbibes, everything he represents is all about trying to seek that transcendental harmony and reconciliation, going for the non-sectarian truth and going for the medicine that can really be a proper palliative for this discordant Kali Yuga afflicted world. So I'm very excited and very honored to be able to introduce our next speaker, namely Sripad Bhaktivedanta Nemi Maharaj. Haribol Maharaj, welcome. You have half an hour.
Hare Krishna. Thank you so much, Yashodananda Prabhuji, Yashodhari, Radhika, all devotees involved in organizing these wonderful festivals and giving us the opportunity to share our memories and realizations. Very privileged to be with all the devotees from all over the world, really. Of my humble obeisances, the lotus feet of my beloved Diksha Guru, Nichile Bhavishta Shishima Bhaktivedanta Swami Maharaj, Srila Prabhupada. Lotus feet of my beloved Shiksha and Sannyas Guru, Shri Rupa Nogavara Shishima Bhaktivedanta Narayana Gosvami Maharaj. Lotus feet of my Shiksha Guru, Srila Bhaktivedanta Bharati Maharaj. All our Rupa Nuga Guru Varga offer obeisances to all devotees present, headed by our senior Vaishnavas. I hadn't actually intended to speak about this, but since Yashashni brought up this, there are actually movements. Just very, very recently, I had an encounter with a small group of, I would say, probably the most senior members of the Russian ISKCON Sangha. And we were discussing the possibility of some degree of cooperation on Srila Prabhupada's first purpose, which is propagating spiritual education and techniques to correct the imbalance of values and introduce peace and unity. And then there's another initiative also, a group of senior devotees from different groups or from no groups, really meeting together to discuss what is our message, how can we make the Vaishnava message, the message of our acharyas, how can we make this more widely known in the world? So there are developments actually. And because we're acutely aware of the state of the world now, it's becoming very, very urgent. I intend actually just to speak about some recollections of Gurudev. So I'll be talking about myself quite a lot as well. Srila Gurudev said that one of the symptoms of a pure devotee is that everyone thinks that, oh, my Guru loves me the most. He loves me better than anybody else. And this actually, Srila Gurudev is the embodiment of love. He's so much a loving personality. He gave love and he talked about love so much. So did our Srila Prabhupada, my Guru Maharaj, but he was building up his institution. And Srila Gurudev spoke more about love, more about relationship with the Vaishnavas, relationship with the pure devotees. So it's really essential for everybody to feel that actually Gurudev loves me now. Just like now I'm staying with Yadav Prabhuji, and in his bookcase, he's got this statement by Srila Prabhupada, I'm closer to you than the air you breathe. Not just when he was here, now. Just like in ISKCON, many devotees who never met Srila Prabhupada, they feel his presence very closely. Many of our devotees from Srila Gurudev Sangha also feel his presence very closely. but many don't. And it's such an important part of our sangha, sadhana, our practice, to feel that we are actually in transcendental presence. It's really essential. So when Srila Gurudeva came to UK, I'd already read the transcript of a speech that he gave on the occasion of centennial or anniversary of Srila Prabhupada's sannyas. And he was being accused of minimizing Prabhupada and saying he was just a servant of Mahavishnu. And I read the transcription. I said, this is ridiculous. He's just an orator. He's glorifying Srila Prabhupada like anything. Other than that, I really didn't know much about him. I had seen him, although I didn't connect. When Srila Prabhupada passed away, I was actually in Mumbai. And I came back 2-3 days later, and there was a sannyasi whom I'd never seen before. He was singing Jayanila Premadana outside the very makeshift samadhi of Srila Prabhupada. And later on, I understood that, oh, this is Srila Bhaktivedanta Narayana Goswami Maharaj. Way, way, way later on. That was actually the first time that I saw him, and I didn't follow up. I was very, very blinkered. So when Srila Gurudeva came, I met with him once, and previously one of our ISKCON members had said to me, you know, you talk about Krishna a lot, but you don't really talk about Radharani. I said, oh, no, I guess I don't know. So I started talking more about Radharani. And I met Srila Gurudeva, and I said, I think I'm servant of Radharani. He said, this is Kalpana. What is Kalpana? Madam Maharaj said, he said, imagination. Gurudeva said, yes, this is imagination. Go on hearing and chanting. So somebody I was very close with, immediately they met Gurudeva. Gurudeva said, you're my disciple. So I said to Srila Gurudeva, I want to be your disciple. He said, no. We got brothers. He kind of put me off like that. Immediately I met him. Actually, the first time I really saw him, like face to face, I was chanting. So our first meeting was in Kirtan. And that was very important, right? Throughout the whole time I was with him, physically, I mean. Immediately I met him, I would say overwhelmed by the sense like, this is like being with Prabhupada. I don't get it. Here's this person, he doesn't look like Prabhupada. He's not saying the same things as Prabhupada. His voice isn't the same. And it's just the same as being with Prabhupada. And I was seriously bewildered. So I cycled over to visit him. I went into his room, offered pranams on the floor. And he's sitting on his bed and he looks down at me. He says, oh, why are you doing like this? We're God brothers. So I asked him, one question I asked him was that you say there's 3 levels of association. There's very advanced devotees, and then there's equals, and then there's junior devotees. So there's different kinds of association. I said, I think I can understand, you know, junior devotees and equal devotees, but who are these very advanced devotees? I don't understand. And he said, did you ever meet your Guru Maharaj? I said, yeah. He said, was there some effect? Yeah, there was an effect. Meeting Prabhupada was like, he wasn't like somebody from a different dimension. He was like somebody in a different dimension. Just, I mean, actually, while Prabhupada was here, I didn't have a personal relationship with him. He was like a transcendental alien for me, really. I mean, anyway. So I said to Gurudev, yes, there was some effect. So he said, so is there anybody now who has the same effect? And I kind of mentally scanned all the, you know, GBCs, sannyasis, and gurus and like that. I said, no, only you. And then I understood what he meant, what he meant by more advanced association. So then I asked him, that I don't understand. It's like you and my Guru Maharaj are the same person, but I know you're not the same person, you're different. So no, we're not very different. He's Bhaktivedanta Swami Maharaj and I'm Swami Bhaktivedanta Narayana. Like joking like that. But I realized more and more as I associated with him, I just felt that really they're not different from each other, really not different. And it was difficult because I was coming from a one-parent family. You know, ISKCON is very much a one-parent family. How could I make way in my heart for somebody else? How could I love somebody else? So I went on tour with him, and he was visiting different people. One time at that time, it was a centennial, Prabhupada centennial, 1996. And I happened to be the editor of the journal of the centennial. So that journal was called Prabhupada Anuga, means following Prabhupada. So Gurudeva was in one devotee's house. He was going around different people. He came to our house as well, sat down on the sofa. He was giving out cookies. So he went to somebody's house, and then he started explaining that actually we are not Prabhupada Anuga. We are Rupa Anuga. I gave in without a shot fired. I mean, I wasn't arguing with him at all. He really emphasized that, and he emphasized there's Rupanuga and Raganuga. So he explained that all Rupanugas are Raganugas, means everyone who's following not just Rupa Goswami, but Rupa Manjari, they're all Raganuga, but not all Raganuga are Rupanuga. For example, Sripad Goswami, who's presenting himself as a Raganuga sadhak, although he's eternal associate, but his mood is not Rupanuga because actually Sripad Goswami, he's in Krishna Lila, he's Lalita, and Rupa Goswami is the chief Manjari underneath Lalita Devi, and then all our acharyas are all in underneath Srila, with Sri Rupa Manjari. So he I was going around with him. Oh yeah, I realized after a few days that, wow, I had been telling devotees, actually, I don't understand Krishna consciousness. I don't know what Krishna consciousness is. I'm going to have to start from the beginning. And actually, sometime before Gurudeva came, one time I sat down and I thought, why am I doing this? What is Krishna consciousness? What's my goal? Go back home, back to Godhead? Of course, I wasn't against that, but I could see it wasn't my motive. I didn't know why I was doing what I was doing. It's the only way I could think of living. So after I've been with Gurudeva for a few days, I realized, wow, I really don't know what Krishna consciousness is, and I really do have to start from the beginning. So I went in to see him, and I said, you know, it seems to me I've been in like shadow world, shadow Harinam, shadow Bhakti. I was thinking, well, you know, maybe he'll say, oh, no, you're a senior devotee, just go on, you're going okay. He didn't. He said, don't be depressed. You have to start sometime. I've been practicing something for like 20 years that time. So I was going around with him, getting more and more impressions. And as I say, I'd accepted him like being like Prabhupada. But my one doubt was, why is he so interested in Prabhupada's movement? Why has he come? Why is he just with ISKCON? Is he trying to take over the movement, or what's going on? It didn't seem likely, but... And then one day he might have been talking to me, I don't know. Anyway, he said, he was describing how when Srila Prabhupada came back to India the first time, so he came with some of his disciples like Achyutananda Prabhu and Kirtananda. As far as I remember, historically, it was like that. So they were cooking for him. And Guruji said that time, the other Gaudiya Mat devotees, Vaishnavas, they would not even accept water from them, from Prabhupada's Western disciples. But he said, I took the prasad because I understand that, you know, they're in Srila, this is Chaitanya Mahaprabhu's mission, and they're following Srila Prabhupada. So I accepted their prasad. And at that point, I realized, oh, you really have faith in Lord Chaitanya like that. You really have faith in my Guru Maharaj. And I just let go of whatever doubts or reservations I had. And that time, you know, newbies like myself were coming in, and we would refer to Srila Gurudeva as Maharaj. And then, of course, his associates, they were saying Gurudev. So I came to Brajanath on one occasion, just like after that, and I referred to Srila Gurudeva as Gurudev and not like Maharaj, and he kind of raised his hand and goes, oh. Shuddhadvaiti Maharaj, now he came in, that time he was Jayanta Krit. So he came, and after a couple of days I said, so what's your impression of Maharaj? He said, oh, he's very difficult to resist. I said, I gave up. And he laughed. And then 2-3 days later, he came up to me and said, I gave up too. So Gurudev at the beginning, he treated me like a senior. Like I said, he said, oh, you know, you're my god brother. And he I would say flattered me. He was giving me confidence. I mean, you could see I was kind of broken. I was coming through, I mean, I was just going through I'd been through a very painful divorce, broken family situation like that. So he was giving me a lot of support. Even, he went to America, and I wrote to him. I said, you know, if you keep on flattering me like this, then the GBC will think that you're not so intelligent. And he wrote back and he said, actually, I see you have good qualities, but it will require good association to bring them out, meaning his association. Anyway, it was going on like that for quite some time. And then one day we were in the Seva Kunj, in his Seva Kunj altar in Rup Sanatan Gaudiya Math. And there was a group of Western devotees there, his Western devotees. So he started saying, you know, Indian devotees are strong. Western devotees are very, very, very weak, very weak. For example, Govinda Bhakta, now Ashram Maharaj, said, Govinda Bhakta, if I offer you sannyas, will you accept? And Govinda Bhakta goes, sannyas, you should offer it to Jnanadas, Gurudev. He's very strong. And Gurudev looks at me and goes, very weak. And from then on, anytime I made a mistake, anytime I was late for something, very weak. And I was so happy. Oh, at last he's telling the truth. At last we're getting real. That went on for some time. Then I was in Uzbekistan on one occasion. And I was worried, actually. It's a very, very oppressive, repressive government there. And I didn't want them to figure out that I was a devotee. So when I came back from Uzbekistan straight to India, I'd shaved my beard, but I'd still got hair. So I was coming back at the beginning of Kartik, so I got a month's growth of hair. And I was wearing trousers, pants in America. And like a fool, I came back to Keshji Gaudiya Math like that, with hair and no beard. And I'd already taken saffron and trousers. And there was quite a scandal amongst the brahmacharis and everyone there. They really thought this was a huge joke. So I, as quickly as I could, I shaved up and put on devotee gear like that. And then I came in the afternoon. Gurudev was sitting with some devotees, and I came in. And he looks at me, he says, who are you? What's your name? Oh my God. I said, Jnanadas, Srila Gurudev? He said, no. My Jnanadas is very strong. You're very weak. It was such a, his policy with me, I have to say, practically throughout our association, he systematically ignored me. He systematically set me up not to be dependent on kind of close association. One time I came up to him and I said, oh, it must have been so different, before you came to the West, because your disciples could come and sit with you and talk with you. And I was kind of edging up. Maybe I could sit down and talk with him. He said, what will they talk about? Only their addictions. And then there was another time we were in America. One time I was in America with Gurudev. So I thought, yeah, it'd be pretty cool. It was after lunch. I thought it'd be pretty cool to, go and chat with Gurudev. So I went and knocked on his door and opened the door, came in. He's sitting on his bed with his legs straight out in front of him. And he's got a book in his lap. And he looks up at me. He said, why aren't you deeply absorbed in some book like me? I said, okay, it's time to go off to obeisances and all that. So, but at the same time, he always let me know that, his affection for me. There was one time, it was in 2000, and I spoke to him after, when he gave class in Keshaji Gaudiya. So he'd go out through the door and then go up the steps. And the savvy devotees, they'd already bolted up the steps. There was another stairway. So when Gurudev came up on the roof, we were all lined up in two lines between the stairs that he was going to come up and his room. So as he came past me, in the class, he'd said, we have to surrender. So as he came past me, I said, Srila Gurudev, I want to surrender, but I need help. And he looked at me like really close in the eyes. He said, yes, I will help you. Come tomorrow with the Western devotees. I said, which Western devotees? Come with Urukram, now Padmanabha Maharaj. So I came to his room, the two of us went to his room. He said, now call the Western devotees. So we called, and they all came in. He said, now, Gyanadas, what is your problem? And after that, he just gave me such a hard time. He told me, we can't keep you here now. You go somewhere and preach. Brajanath will get the ticket for you. He gave me such a hard time. There was another time he was giving class, and I was sitting 3 or 4 rows back from him. So he said, give Gyanadas the mic, or microphone. So I'm sitting there with a microphone in my hand like an ice cream corner. He says, so now, Gyanadas, what kind of a disciple do you think you are? I was speechless. Someone behind me said, Chaya, shadow. Then later on, within a few days, and the devotees thought that I'd made some offense, So later on, Gurudev's giving class from Prem Vibhart. This is Srila Jagadananda Pandit's book, amazing book. And there, Srila Jagadananda's Pandit, he's saying that, he's talking about not expressing love directly. So Gurudev said, in the spiritual world, he's giving class now, and I'm sitting in the audience pretty close to him. In the spiritual world, no one says, I love you. Because if they say that, then the love will evaporate. Similarly, in this world, the spiritual master will never say to the disciple, I love you. And then he looked directly at me and he said, you should realize these things. So after that, I went to Russia. I understood and I felt. So I went to Russia, and then that year was the first time Gurudev came to Russia, our first festival. So Urukram, as he was then, and myself, we met him at the airport. He was so delighted to see me, so happy. And then later on, during that festival, it so happened that I was walking with him, just the two of us. And I said something about, when you threw me out of Keshaji Gaudiya. He said, oh, that was a prison for you. So the whole thing was a wind-up. He was actually just chucking me out on the road. So I stayed mostly in the Russian-speaking countries. One time I was traveling, this is some years later. I was traveling in Russia, and it was a very difficult situation in one city. And I was feeling very responsible, and I could feel that I don't think this is just my feeling. I feel like I'm channeling Gurudev's feeling about responsibility for the situation. And then out of previous to that, I'd asked him, what is my service? How can I serve you? And he said, I've told you already. I'm waiting for your answer. I thought, he hasn't told me. And I was worried about that, when I was traveling. I was thinking about that a lot. Oh, what's he talking about? What does he want me to do? And then out of the blue, when I was in this city, he wrote me this letter. I hadn't written to him recently. It wasn't a reply to anything. He said, just see how happy you are. You're traveling and preaching. You're editing, writing. He said, this is Manasi Seva. All Manabhishta Seva. Sorry, he said, this is Manabhishta Seva. All the wealth of our acharyas is in this service. Something I really carry with myself. A big feature in our relationship was music. First time, as I said, first time we met him, we saw each other directly like that. I was playing the harmonium and leading kirtan. I started to get up. He said, no. So I was I was on tour with him, and 2 or 3 days after, or 3 or 4 days after that, I turned up with the violin and the kirtan, and I'm sitting right in front of him. And I was playing. He really liked it. So 2 or 3 days after that, he said, I've heard you sing English songs. You've written some English songs. I said, yeah. He said, so I want to hear. So then the next meeting, I sang Krishna's So Wonderful. And he was laughing like anything. Yashoda Gopi was there. She'd been with him. She said, he hasn't laughed like that for 10 years. So at the end, he said something. And at the end, and then Shyam Sundar Prabhu, actually, sometime after that, he said, do you remember what Gurudev said to you after you sang that Krishna So Wonderful? I said, no. He said, you're a funny man. I want your association. So that time I asked Gurudev, so when I come to India, should I bring the violin? He said, yes, you can do. And somehow or other I didn't. And when I arrived in India, that Kartik, he said, so have you got your violin? I said, no. He said, oh, you've done a very bad thing. And there was a couple of times I turned up, once from Russia and once from Uzbekistan without the violin. And he was really angry. One time he said, you've taken my energy. So it was a struggle. All the time, every morning and evening, every Kartik, and whenever we were in Gaura Purnima as well at that time. So he wanted me to sing the pranam mantras with the violin. It was such a struggle because it's really difficult. The microphones were never set up properly. Couldn't get 2 mics, one for the violin and one for the voice. So I was like struggling like this. Once I bought an electric violin and plugged that in, that didn't work. So many different. The only time it really came off was once in Germany, and Harinamananda had bought he's got a really nice microphone. It really worked there. But that was one time he said to me, without your violin, you are zero. And I mentioned that to another devotee in India who plays harmonium and sings not so beautifully. And he laughed. He said, oh, Gurudev said to me, with your harmonium, you are zero. So I see my time's coming up, practically speaking. Srila Gurudev, he and Prabhupada, they're in the Parampara together. They're in Bhagavat Parampara. For me, he's Srila Prabhupada's Bhagavat Parampara successor. And I always think of them like, on the Vyasasana together. Although Gurudev refers to Prabhupada as his Shiksha Guru, but they're on the same level. And Srila Gurudev achieved something just as Prabhupada spread Krishna consciousness all over the world. So Srila Gurudev succeeded in planting the seed of Raganuga Bhakti in the West amongst such unqualified people, and he did it in such a skillful way, despite so many objections. We can understand from his spiritual name that this is his mission. Like you said, Chaitanya Mahaprabhu has sent me to preach this. And he's the personification, just like all the mantras, they're personifications of some quality of Srimati Radhika. So he's the personification of their pastimes. How can anyone put their hand on his mouth? So I offer my humble obeisances at Srila Gurudev's lotus feet. I haven't glorified my own Guru Maharaj, and I haven't mentioned Srila Bhaktivedanta Vaman Goswami Maharaj or Mahabhagavats. And offer my obeisances at the lotus feet of all devotees present, especially all senior devotees. Hare Krishna. Vanchakapatim Pashakti Vasan Niveta. Vikidanam Bhavaniva Vaishnava.
Thank you, Maharaji, for a very personal, very, very deeply personal account of your relationship with Srila Gurudev. I feel that you left nothing hidden. So that was a very sweet journey you took us through. And there were three, I mean, many takeaways. The three standout comments for me were how you said that you were starting from the beginning again when you met Srila Gurudev. That's a pretty brave thing to do when you've been doing something for 20 years, to start from the beginning. And I think that's a very interesting instruction for us all, actually. In some ways, you could say every time we wake up in the morning, we're starting from the beginning. But Srila Gurudev certainly was directing you in that way. And I loved it when you said he was very difficult to resist. That certainly was. Srila Gurudev was completely impossible to resist, is impossible to resist. And that was a very profound statement in the end, the fact that Srila Gurudev's mission is he has so skillfully planted the seed of Raganuga Bhakti in the West. That is incredibly profound. And it's imbued in everything that we all do. And we are extensions of that, actually. We are, he wants us all to be empowered to continue that, as Madhav Maharaj was saying earlier, to spread it more internationally, globally, with more enthusiasm, more loyalty, less fear. Yeah, beautiful. Thank you, Maharaji.